Hey everyone! As a local historian, there is nothing I love more than a building that tells a story. And today, in this explainer, I'm going to be your guide through the stunning architecture, the verified true crime history, and yes, the infamous urban legends of India's oldest High Court. We're going to see exactly how bricks, mortar, and some pretty dark historical injustices have combined to create myths that just absolutely refuse to fade away. Let's get right into it. So let's kick things off with our rather chilling question. One that's been echoing through these grand halls for over 160 years. Is the Kolkata High Court actually haunted? Now, I know what you're thinking. Ghost stories, right? Just campfire stuff. But this question is so persistent, and the local lore is so deeply ingrained in the city's fabric, that a modern sitting judge literally had to address it in open court recently. We'll actually get to that wild moment a bit later, but first, let's map out our route for today. Here's our quick itinerary. We're looking at the shadows of Kolkata High Court, its Gothic architecture, the true story of blood on the stairs, the headless woman's plea, and finally, the infamous secrets of Room 11. All right, part 1, Shadows of Kolkata High Court, Exploring the Lore. I want you to just imagine walking through the dark, completely deserted corridors of this massive colonial building right after dusk. You know, the day's legal arguments have settled, the crowds have all gone home, and this heavy, heavy silence falls over the place. Well, it's during these exact hours that the staff rely on what we call our ghost hunter's ledger. We've got the headless woman, believed to be Nistar Rout, who announces her presence with tinkling anklets. Then we have the thirsty spirit of Tipis the poet, who brings these sudden, inexplicable cold drafts. And of course, the phantom convicts, just these nameless prisoners lingering in the shadows near Room 11. But here's the thing, as a historian, these aren't just spooky campfire tales. They're fascinating cultural artifacts of the city's collective memory, preserving the very real stories of people who felt deeply wronged by the system. To really wrap our heads around these legends, we've got to look at the timeline. It's absolutely crucial to ground these supernatural whispers in a strict, verifiable 19th century reality. The court was officially established in 1862, but just look at the sheer density of tragedy that hit right after. You've got the assassination of Justice Norman in 1871, the completion of the iconic Gothic building in 1872, and then the horrific death of Nistar Rout in 1881. It's like the walls of this building were literally mortared with this intense, dramatic human history right from the get-go. Moving into part 2, a Gothic legal masterpiece and the reality in stone. So, pivoting away from the paranormal for a second, let's talk about the magnificent physical reality of the building itself. The Kolkata High Court is a breathtaking example of 13th century Flemish Gothic architecture. It was designed by a British architect named Walter Granville, and this style is just striking. We're talking imposing central towers, incredibly ornate stonework, sweeping pointed arches, and these beautifully spacious internal courtyards that let in natural light and air. Make no mistake, this was designed to be a massive, looming fortress built specifically to project the absolute authority and total permanence of colonial law. And this actually leads to a really fascinating architectural irony. Granville modeled the High Court directly after the Cloth Hall or Laken Hall of Ypres over in Belgium. But here is the crazy part. While the 13th century Belgian inspiration was practically leveled by German artillery during World War I and had to be completely rebuilt, the Kolkata High Court standing today remains perfectly intact as a preserved heritage structure. Think about that for a second. It's actually a more authentic, surviving representative of this original Flemish Gothic style than the actual building in Europe that inspired it. Wild, right? Now, looking back at its foundations, the court was officially established on July 1st, 1862. It replaced the older colonial courts, with Sir Barnes Peacock stepping up as its very first Chief Justice. But here's a little historical quirk that's really interesting. The institution itself is a full decade older than the iconic 1872 Gothic building everyone associates it with. Yep, for its first 10 years, the highest court in the entire region was just operating out of temporary premises near the Esplanade, while this massive stone behemoth was being constructed. Okay, part 3. Blood on the Stairs, a look at some true historical tragedy. So as we've hinted at, not all the dark tales whispered in these halls are myths. Right on the actual steps of the court, a brazen daylight assassination took place. In September of 1871, Chief Justice John Paxton Norman was fatally attacked by a man named Abdullah. Now, Abdullah was a sympathizer of the Wahhabi movement, and he was out for revenge over the harsh sentencing of nationalist leaders, specifically a highly revered leader named Amir Khan, who Justice Norman had sentenced to penal transportation. This wasn't just a random attack. It was an act of pure political rage that absolutely shook the British colonial establishment to its core. The aftermath, as you might expect, was swift and incredibly severe. During his trial, Abdullah flat out refused to give up his co-conspirators. The presiding judge, Justice Paul, delivered a chilling final judgment right before sentencing him to hang. He looked at him and said, "Your dark secret shall die with you. Your name will be a term of derision even amongst your instigators." Wow. Those intense, biting remarks, they perfectly capture the incredible dramatic flair, the absolute unwavering authority, and the harsh, brutal realities of colonial-era justice.
Moving on to Part 4, The Headless Woman's Plea, Separating Myth from Reality.
If you ever get the chance to talk to anyone who works late at the court, they'll inevitably bring up the haunting, rhythmic sound of tinkling anklets echoing through those dark, empty corridors. And this local lore actually stems from a very real, incredibly tragic arc from 1881, the story of Nistar Raut. Nistar was a sex worker who fell deeply in love with a merchant, and she just wanted out. She wanted to start a fresh new life. So she actually filed an official legal plea to have her name removed from the prostitution register. But, as the legend goes, the male-dominated establishment simply refused to let her go. Her plea was denied. Her lover was suddenly framed for a robbery and thrown in jail. And just days later, Nistar's decapitated body was discovered wearing absolutely nothing but her signature anklets. It's heartbreaking. Her story is a prime example of how historical oppression, patriarchal control, and unresolved real-world injustice directly birthed the terrifying legend of her headless apparition, forever roaming the halls seeking the justice she was denied in life. And finally, Part 5, Secrets of Room 11, the epicenter of the paranormal. We're venturing now into an area so infamous, so shrouded in dread, that historically even armed, seasoned policemen have flat out refused to stand guard there at night. I'm talking about Room 11. This specific courtroom carries an incredibly heavy, dark legacy. Back during the British era, this was the room where numerous death sentences were handed down to both notorious criminals and Indian revolutionaries alike. It even has a secret underground tunnel that was used to transport convicts securely away from the public eye. And the winding staircase just outside this room, it is ground zero for phantom sightings. We're talking shadowy figures, people feeling unseen hands physically pushing them on the stairs, and the lingering presence of condemned prisoners.
Now look, you might be sitting there easily dismissing all of this as hyperbole or overactive imaginations. But get this. In a truly astonishing moment in 2022, yes, 2022, a modern sitting high court judge, Justice Abhijit Gangotpadia, openly validated this eerie history right in the middle of a hearing. A paranormal group had actually petitioned the court to spend the night outside Room 11 to investigate. The judge paused the proceedings and explicitly stated on the record that the story is, quote, not completely false, and went on to acknowledge that there are some such forces here. Having a sitting judge legally validate the local lore, that cements Room 11's status in the city's collective imagination forever. There's just no going back from that.
And having that kind of institutional acknowledgement really colors our understanding of the other legends too. Like the ghost of Tapis the poet. Tapis was a 19th century poet who bravely protested the East India Company. And as punishment for his words, he was imprisoned, deliberately denied food and water, and ultimately executed while severely dehydrated. Local legend claims his thirsty spirit still roams the high courts searching for a drink. But what's absolutely vital to take away from this, as historians, is that ghosts like Tapis or Nistar Raut, they aren't just there for cheap jump scares. They serve as chilling, deeply poignant metaphors for the lingering cultural trauma and the systemic, brutal abuses of colonial rule. Well, that brings us to the end of our explainer today, and I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to chew on. Are these magnificent Gothic halls truly haunted by actual spirits, or are they simply haunted by the unresolved injustices of our history, demanding to be remembered? You know, perhaps these urban legends are simply society's way of ensuring that the darkest chapters of our past, the voices that were silenced, the desperate pleas that were ignored, are never, ever truly forgotten. Thank you so much for exploring this history with me today. Keep asking questions, keep looking into the shadows, and I'll see you in the next one.